Hello everyone, today I want to share my Furina build and team compositions with you in the short guide. As always, I start with a build, then go over team compositions, and at the end I show some of this gameplay.
Bitter pill to swallow. Remember, health comes
Through me, justice is served. Their penance.
As for the build, I think her ideal stat line is very comparable to Yelan, as in high HP, crit rate, crit damage, and you can pretty much ignore elemental mastery, but she needs very high energy recharge. This character is also super energy hungry. I'd say 200% is already the bare minimum. I would feel more comfortable with like 220, otherwise if you're fighting a single boss you might find yourself a little bit short to get that elemental burst skill back in time. And on the other side, you pretty much have to sacrifice Hydro damage bonus, but it isn't a big deal. You already get a lot of damage bonus on this character from the Golden Troop set and the burst skill of hers. As for talents, I think the burst skill is borderline broken, but the elemental skill also deals pretty reasonable damage, so I'd say just level them both up equally and you're fine. As for the normal attacks, they are pretty much irrelevant until you hit Constellation 6. As for Constellations, Furina is already really good at C0, but that didn't stop the devs from making her Constellations really crazy as well. Constellation 1 basically makes her burst skill go from borderline broken to actually completely overpowered. It's just more damage bonus. Then Constellation 2, I think thematically it's kind of surprising that this isn't Constellation 1, because historically we have seen this as Constellation 1 a lot, like for example Raiden or Neuvillette. This basically just makes it easier to generate fanfare points and a little bit of extra HP. Then Constellation 4 is just a little bit of extra energy generation. I wasn't super impressed when I first saw this, but after playing with her and seeing how energy hungry she is, I think this is actually deceptively good. Maybe this even saves you like 30 to 40% energy recharge, which might completely change the way you want to go about this character in terms of artifact main stats. So this can be really good. And Constellation 4, after pressing the elemental skill, you get a 10-second Hydro infusion, and her normal attacks hit really hard with this. So you might be able to use her as a filler in like quick swap teams. It's like 7 attacks, I believe. So also really, really good. As for weapon options, we don't have to think too much about it. Similar to Raiden, we get the perfect 4-star weapon for Furina from the fishing minigame. Everybody can get this. And it's a lot of extra crit rate on the elemental skill, which is basically the only meaningful way for this character to deal damage. And then you get a lot of free energy recharge, which is perfect for this character. We already talked about it. Otherwise, if you don't want to use it or you use it on someone else, you can use a Favonia sword, which is basically a lot of energy as well, but you are missing out on the extra crit rate. And then, if you are using another weapon, even her own, you need a really good Golden Troop set, specifically a lot of energy recharge, substats, which can be a little awkward at first, because if you don't have it, you need to be a little bit creative, maybe even sacrifice the 4P set for like a 2-piece emblem set just to reach the energy recharge. So until another weapon without energy recharge substats pays off, it can take some time of farming artifacts, I guess. Speaking of artifacts, we already covered substats earlier. As for main stats, I think it's guaranteed energy recharge in this slot. She just needs it in my opinion. As for the cup, I think HP percentage is actually better than Hydro damage bonus, because she already has a lot of damage bonus from the Golden Troop 4P set and the burst skill of Furina, so adding in another extra 40% Hydro damage bonus isn't super impressive. And on the other hand, if you don't run HP percentage, you just run HP percentage in substats basically, which is a little bit questionable, so this should be better. And in the last slot, it's crit rate or crit damage, and I think she has crit rate ascension stats, so crit damage will probably lead to a better stat balance overall. And for the set, like I said earlier, Golden Troop 4P set is the goal, but until you get there with enough energy recharge, you probably have to sacrifice like the 4P set and run like Emblem of Severed Fate. If you don't run the like 4-star weapon, that is. As for teams, I think Furina can fit basically any team. She just needs one character that deals a lot of damage with their skills alone, so not with like transformative reactions. so they can benefit from Furina's damage buff. And ironically enough, Furina herself can already be that character, because while she can be a dedicated healer, I think it is more comfortable and even more effective to just use her as a regular sub DPS and have her pair up with an actual healer. So she is very much, in my mind, a sub DPS with a lot of utility, similar to Nahida for example. And for those healers, I think there are two standout options. One is Baiju, the other one is Jean, and obviously they can press one button and top of your entire team instantly, and it will generate a lot of fanfare points, which is obviously way more effective than any other healer like, for example, Kokomi or Bennett could do. And now you might ask yourself, why not pick something like Barbara? She can do the same, but Baiju and Jean also provide extra utility. Jean can wear the Viridescent set for the extra resistance shred, and Baiju gets bonuses for any Dendro-related elemental reactions, and I think Aggravate and Spread is a really good game plan for Furina. Yes, she will sprinkle in some Hyper Bloom, but if you run something like, for example, Official to get the procs from her Ascension stats, from her Ascension passive, sorry, and run something like Raiden or Kaching or what's his name, Sino, or any Electro main DPS, you can trigger a lot of Aggravate on top of the Hyper Bloom, and it will be really good in my experience. And going more down the spread damage route, you have something like Tenari or Alhaitham or Nahida and do some charge attacks with her, which should also do really nice damage. And then for Jean teams specifically, I think freeze teams would do really well. Unfortunately, I don't have her, so just pretend Sayu here's Jean. And then you go for something like Rosaria, Shen, maybe even Mona. And then for your main DPS, something like Ayaka, Ganyu, or Risley, and you have a really good freeze team on your hand. And then you have Vaporized teams with a Pyro sub DPS like Zhangling for example, and a Hydro main DPS like Neuvillette or Ayato, or you flip it around and pick like a Pyro main DPS, Diluc, Yoimiya, Klee, whatever else, and pick a Hydro sub DPS like for example Jingzhou, Yelan, whatever you can come up with. There are two exceptions though, Linny and Hu Tao. You can play them with Furina, but you need to be a little bit adaptive. Obviously Linny doesn't want to have Hydro on the target, so you might want to leave Furina in her healing state. So a team like this would work. Otherwise you could switch to something like Zhangling, and your Pyro application is probably high enough, so you have a lot of Pyro on the target and can leave Furina in DPS mode. So it depends a little bit here. And then the other for Hu Tao, it is a little bit awkward because again, you don't want to have a lot of healing in your team with Hu Tao, because otherwise you don't get your low HP Pyro damage bonus. So you would pick something like Zhongli probably, and something like Jingzhou again, and you will use Furina in damage mode, and then once you're switching off Hu Tao, you can probably switch her back into healing mode, heal your team up, and then before you switch back to Hu Tao to start her rotation again, you can maybe switch her back into damage mode to just drop her below 50% again. So it's a little awkward with those teams. And one last thing I'd like to mention, which I think is kind of special, it's new Geo synergy. Furina can actually buff Geo characters for once. Kazuha can't do it. Yelan isn't really great for characters like Ito or Ningguang because they do a lot of charge attacks. And I think the last character like 3 years ago was Mona. So picking up Furina here might be actually really nice if you like to play Geo characters. As for the gameplay showcase, there really isn't too much to say about her. You just press both of her skills, then switch to your healer to heal up your team and generate fanfare points, and then switch to your DPS characters to benefit from that damage buff. There are some visual indicators. Once you press your burst skill, there are bubbles all around your screen on the edges, and there are 3 increments of like, I believe 100, 200 and 300 the maximum fanfare points. For 100 they are popping up 3 heads at the bottom of your screen. Once you hit 200 fanfare points, they are like, I believe 10 all over the bottom of your screen, and then once you hit the maximum damage buff at 300 fanfare points, I think they are like 20 heads, like tightly stacked all at the bottom of your screen. So let's just engage this Ruin Guard and see how that looks. So I press both the skills, and now I switch to Baiju. My team is pretty low, I heal it up, and let's see how this goes. We see the heads, that was already 200, and a little bit more healing, and there that should be the 300 damage mark at full, like 300 fanfare points. And one more quick thing I forgot to mention is Furina will initially always be in damage mode, so pressing your elemental skill will always summon these guys, which will attack your opponents. If you want to heal with her, you just do a charge attack and it will switch to this guy, which will heal. And it will always stay active, so even if you switch off her, to undo this you have to do another charge attack. And also, while your elemental skill is active, you will be able to walk on water, which is really nice for just exploration. And for now I'm gonna leave you with some Abyss gameplay. A quick disclaimer though, this is Furina on a 4-piece golden cube set, because obviously energy is not an issue in a Raiden team, but my artifacts are still very bad. I don't even have an HP cap on that set, so look at her, she has like 26k HP. The build I showed in this video would have probably performed better, so what I'm getting at is, this might not be the most accurate representation of what this character can actually do.
Let my name echo in song.
Mind the side effects. Taking a turn for the best.
Now you shall perish. Illusion shattered. Time for takeoff. Strike a pose. Let the world come off.
A bitter pill to swallow. Remember, health comes.
Torn to oblivion. There is no escape. Think you can get away? Time to shine. Yoo-hoo!
Mind the side effects. Taking a turn for the best.
Now you shall perish.
Alright, we made it to the end. I hope this gave you some inspiration for your own builds and was somewhat helpful. Stay tuned for more videos. Until then, have fun and bye bye.